Um, I guess I'll add that there were so many benefits as I look back on when I went through Leadership Iowa. And so again, I was in the class of 12, 13, and coincidentally, otherwise, two of my former classmates are on the panel today. So Amy Moore and you saw Kay Snyder, our current program chair, was also in my class. I kind of think there were maybe three big benefits. I had already, been around the state many times in prior roles, but it was really an amazing opportunity to engage or re-engage with our state. So many of us spend all of our time either in one community or one, area of the state and don't really get around to explore. And so many incredible opportunities to engage across this incredible state that we're fortunate enough to live in. And then many of us, spend most of our careers or time in one industry. And there is so much to learn and to be learned by going deeper into and exploring manufacturing, education, healthcare, economic development, state government, all those topics that you'll get to explore, one a month by going through the class. And it's been said a couple times, but perhaps the greatest benefit that you don't even realize going into it are the connections. You get to meet 39 other people, plus some amazing staff, Jesse, Mackenzie, Becky, who are on the line today. You're going to make 40 plus new connections. And at first, they're just going to be connections. And then they very quickly become friends. And by the end of the program, I absolutely considered every one of them part of my family. And these are people, many of whom I never would have had a chance to meet or interact with. And so many of them I still stay connected with today. We either get together or we call upon each other, either for business or for personal things. And so I just can't stress enough what an incredible program this has been for me and for so many of the people that I've been with the program with. So I highly encourage you to ask questions and to consider joining the Leadership Iowa family.
Thanks, Jason. Allison, any final comments?
Yeah, I would echo what Jason said. I can honestly tell you that not one day, and I literally mean not one day goes by where I don't talk to at least one person that I met through Leadership Iowa. And a lot of times that's on a personal level. And that brings me to my next point. Yes, this is a professional development program, but quite honestly, it is a personal development program as well. I needed this program more personally than I ever thought I needed it. And I went through the class a couple of years ago and I got the privilege to be a co-chair, and I gained so much, not only professionally, but quite honestly, most importantly for me personally, through this program and through those connections I made. Some of the people that I met through this program are the people I turn to when I need somebody the most, professionally or personally. And I promise you, I will try not to cry, but I always do. I got the privilege to meet all of these people, not only through Leadership Iowa and through being on the board now. And what Jason says, that these people are my family, I will live and die for these people that I met through this program. You don't walk into a room full of Leadership Iowa alumni and feel like a stranger ever. You may not have personally met any of those people. I've met a lot of people through this program online this last year, and I walk into a room and I never feel alone when there's Leadership Iowa people there. So it is totally worth the time commitment. It is totally worth the juggling. It is totally worth all of that, not only professionally, but personally. And if you have any questions, please, please, please reach out to myself or any one of us. We may have never met you, but we will answer and be there for you, whether you call or email, in a heartbeat. So please reach out.
Thanks, Allison. And while I go to Amy, I'm going to ask Allison, Jason, Amy, and Matt, if you don't mind throwing your emails in the chat for any extra questions. But Amy, any final comments from you?
I would absolutely echo what's already been said. I happen to be going through kind of a rough time at work when I was going through Leadership Iowa, and this group became my rock. It's a safe place to say, hey, I'm really struggling with XYZ. Whether it's professional or personal, and just having that support network was just huge for me. And the other thing I would say is the board has specifically looked at how do we keep this going, and how do we continue to do valuable and provide valuable networking opportunities after your Leadership Iowa class ends. So pre-COVID, things have kind of been put on hold a little bit, but there's some targeted efforts to really get alumni together, because it's not just about your class that you participate with, it's that entire network of 1,200 people across Iowa. So the board is really specifically looking at that as well, which I think is huge. And I've loved participating in that and getting to meet people outside of my specific class years. So it doesn't end when your class graduation ends. It continues on. And so that's why it's even more valuable.
Okay, Matt, we'll turn it over to you as the most recent alum on this panel today. What are your comments and why would you recommend Leadership Iowa?
I think my semi-short answer is there's a few tipping points in people's professional and personal careers, and I didn't know it walking into it, but Leadership Iowa ended up being that for me. So there's 2 or 3 of those in my life on the professional side, and Leadership Iowa was right at the top. And it was just one of those that I just wasn't quite sure what I was getting into. I had the butterflies in the stomach when I first went into my first session, didn't know anybody in the room. It's a little tough at this point in my life to walk into a room where I have zero connection with anybody and having to start over with developing those relationships. And Allison's point, Jason and Amy, everybody echoes it. This is family now. And so when that phone rings, when that email pops from any of those people within that class, I stop and I listen and I respond and I'm vested. A lot of the questions or the things that were teed up for me to maybe convey to everybody that today are very good ones. I think the one thing that stands out for me that I just want to highlight, that I really want to highlight is, especially with us just recently going through an election year, Leadership Iowa prepared me in a much, much, much better fashion to address the civility of how we address the topics of what camp are you in, left, right, middle, I don't really care. There was all of that within our class, which by the way, was one of the greatest classes ever. We learned to be civil, and unless you sit in a room with somebody and break bread and take the time to understand their perspective, it's tough to really understand that. And there's reasons behind the why that are a little difficult if it's just simply a virtual or maybe 1 hour something. When you spend multiple days all around the state, this great state, and see not only what's going on in those communities, but you hear those perspectives from your fellow classmates, it forced you to, I hope it forced you to sit and pause and say, oh, that's why they're talking that way. That's why they have that opinion. And if you don't, or if you're not personally connected, it's very, very difficult or very, very easy to dismiss that opinion or that perspective. So the one other thing, growing up, I'm a John Deere kid. Dad and grandpa worked for John Deere. Big Green, it was great, but I didn't quite understand the why Big Green even exists. And so my favorite session in many, many ways was an agriculture session in Southwest Iowa, where the ramifications of what Iowa does in this world, providing food and business to not only our state, but the world, blew me away. I felt like, what a naive kid. I drove around the state for decades and I just didn't appreciate what was going on in my backyard. And that's just one example of so many that were just so powerful. I'm looking at Amy, the higher education session up in the Cedar Falls, Waterloo area was tremendous. And so every one of them has their own unique traits and educational opportunities that you take from them. But at the end of the day, I think that 40+ individuals that you connect with is probably the home run for everybody. So welcome to answer any questions or connect with anybody offline as well if there's more questions about that recent experience.